Some truths are never meant to be revealed. When Evie's father returned home from World War II, the family fell back into its normal life pretty quickly. But Joe Spooner brought back more with him than just war stories. Movie star handsome Peter Coleridge, a young ex-GI who served in Joe's company, shows up, and Evie finds herself falling for him, ignoring the secrets that surround him, until a tragedy occurs that shatters her family and breaks her life in two. As she begins to realize that almost everything she believed was really a lie, Evie must get to the heart of the deceptions and choose between loyalty to her parents and feelings for the man she loves. Someone will have to be betrayed. The question is, who?
Hello, younglings, and welcome to the Padawan Library Centennial Celebration!
Whoop, whoop.
100 episodes in the the Star Wars Junior Novel Podcast. Can you believe it? 100 episodes the show's gone on. And I'm Levi Paratic, as always. With me, of course, Tim May.
Hello, everyone, and this is our 100th episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had a couple little bonus episodes, so more than 100. But this is our 100th official episode, and in order to celebrate our 100th episode, there were a couple reasons. If you're wondering, you're looking at the title, you're like, that book's not
a Star Wars book.
We're reviewing a book called What I Saw and How I Lied, which is by Judy Blundell, a.k.a. Jude Watson, who wrote many of the books we've reviewed on this show.
More than probably...
I would say 80%.
80%.
Maybe not 80%, maybe 75%, but a lot.
A lot.
So we're going to celebrate her legacy on this 100th episode, and our own relationship, you and me, Levi.
Yep.
And the reason we're doing that is because, first of all, the show is ending in the near future, so
correct.
We want to save, top 5 books, top 5 characters, all that for our finale.
Right.
We don't want to do that now and then have nothing to do for our last episode. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
So for this is a bit of an offbeat thing, and I realized because of the many delays we've had of the show in the last month or two.
Many, many delays.
We have not reviewed a Star Wars book in over a month, I feel like.
Because we had the interview.
Because we had the interview that we did with Emil, and we did...
some recommends, some lists.
Yeah, well, of course, we had to fill in when we had to miss time. You had an injury last week.
Yep.
You talked about it. Go back in the feed if you want to hear about it.
Feeling better.
I'm glad. I'm happy for you. All right, so what we're doing here is the first... part of the show. We have convened on our old college campus.
Yes, we are currently sitting at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, the place where we both have our bachelor degrees Where we met. We're currently sitting outside of the buffet-style dining hall, Van Houten, a place many freshmen would frequent.
Yeah, and a place we were on our way over here, and we'll explain why we're not inside, why we're outside. But a place we realized we had, despite the fact that we went to school together and probably saw each other every day for a 3 or 4 year period.
Yep.
Never ate here together. And I realized part of that is that we really started hanging out in our sophomore year because we had no classes together freshman year. And I only knew you by reputation. You were the big new hot shot in the film department. You were in 4D design class, which is a bullshit class, actually making short films, whereas my 4D design professor was just like, no, you will learn After Effects. So I remember like going to the film festival and seeing you had stuff in it. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, who's this fucking freshman that has films in the film festival? What the fuck? So I met you the following year when we started our film program in earnest, and had every film class together from that point on. But at that point, neither of us were going to Van Houten.
No,
because it's a classic college cafeteria.
Yeah.
Although, and we're here and we're outside because it's currently closed. No shit, it's the summer. We were kind of dumb thinking we could go. But we're here and we realized that. We didn't realize. Oh shit! It's starting to rain. We'll be back.
Hang on. Let's just go to the stage. The Burrow Pit stage.
God, it's pouring.
It's all right. It's all right. We got this undercover stage we can sit at.
Looks like a stage is being erected. Okay.
Okay. We're definitely gonna have to take a photo in front of this.
This is a disaster. All right. And we're keeping this all in.
Yep.
Right.
So
we're here. Speaking of this stage, recently this building, I don't know exactly when, sometime in the last few years, has been renovated.
You're right.
And this was always, it's a notoriously bad college cafeteria. There were better eating options on campus and off. So after your freshman year, you basically never come here.
Right.
But they've tried to make it hip, tried to make it cool. We're sitting on a stage where supposedly live music will be performed. I have my doubts that ever actually happened.
They have this fire pit out here.
That's where we were sitting earlier.
Yeah, we were sitting at this, it's a gas fire pit. They've done everything they can to try to make this really cool for the kids.
And I have here a description of the newly renovated Van Houten. That is worth reading because it's classic college bullshit. Like they try to sell students on the experience rather than like actually invest in like paying their professors and like keep bringing them on full time. Not paying them $2,000 per section like fucking assholes. All right, so so this is what they say. They say kick back, plug in, and enjoy a great meal with friends at the new Van Houten Marketplace.
Marketplace?
The freshly renovated space features a variety of dining areas, media lounge, student art gallery. Oh, shit.
Oh.
We'll talk about that in a minute. And, of course, all your favorite foods. Expanded menu items include farm-to-table, gluten-free, vegetarian, and other healthy choices. See you at Van!
And one of the reasons we've decided on this, because we're a Star Wars podcast, you're probably wondering, where is the Star Wars content in all of this?
Oh, gosh. Well, for long-time listeners, they know we went to the same school, Edinburgh University, that Dave Filoni went to.
Yes, the director of creative at Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni.
These days, yeah. So he's by far the most notable alumni, certainly of the film program. He's in the animation department, but technically those are the same department. Whatever. We don't need to get into it.
Don't need to get into that.
But I'd say he's probably the most notable, at least living alumnus. Of the school. I actually can't even think of other.
I can't either.
Famous people, at least. Like there's probably other millionaire. There's probably millionaires and stuff. That I don't know the name of.
The story is that Sharon Stone came for a semester, but
of course,
that doesn't count.
Shouts to Sharon.
Shouts to Sharon. But this hall has definitely been here forever, and he would have definitely eaten here. So that was part of our whole idea.
That's part of your idea. I was just like, you know what? This is the most self-indulgent fan podcast in the world, so let's just celebrate ourselves before we celebrate our primary subject, who is Jude Watson, a.k.a. Judy Blundell. So we'll talk about the book in a little bit. But I just wanted to, we were going to record from various locations on campus here, right? So Van Houten was going to be where we recorded our opening thing, and then we were going to go to another building. We'll see if that works out.
That building's even open.
We'll see if that works out. But we'll talk about that in the second section. But I just wanted to say, we a couple years ago talked that part of the reason this podcast exists is that it's an easy way for us to maintain our friendship, talk every week, talk about something, a shared love of ours, which is Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so that's why it gets very self-indulgent sometimes. We live in different areas, although we're closer now than we have been in a while, but, like, geographically closer.
Right.
Part of it is that, so I thought for the 100th episode, let's just do the most self-indulgent possible episode.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the beginning.
From the very beginning.
Somebody coming out of the building.
Uh-oh. They're probably going to be like, why are you here? What are you doing?
Well, we're just getting out of the rain.
Are you open?
I don't know.
We should ask them that.
All right. Let's try. Maybe we should try moving somewhere.
Yeah, let's try. Let's try to go somewhere else.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
All right.
So we're on our way.
We're on our way to Doucette Hall, which is our art building where we spend most of our time. We're going
to see if it's even open.
If it's even open. We are walking across campus, which is easily half a mile. So we're going to have to walk back to our cars later. That'll be a huge ordeal. So.
Oh, huge ordeal.
Huge ordeal.
It's not that fun.
Tim, what are your feelings on disc golf? Because we see
what?
disc golf, frisbee golf. We see here that they have put up a frisbee golf course on campus.
I have no real familiarity with disc golf. I'm seeing it now. Disc catcher, pro disc golf target.
I always just steer clear of the disc golfers. I don't know why.
I remember the big thing when we were here was longboarding.
Oh, longboarding was so popular.
Yeah, and they just clogged up the walkways.
Mm-hmm.
They were we're walking, and we have to avoid all this goose shit, of course.
Yeah, there's goose shit everywhere right now.
I'm sure, those longboarders are just let me ride through, man. So, they loved it. They
love taking up space. That's what they love, just taking up all the space they possibly could. So now this building over here.
This used to be the radio station?
The radio station.
Which it probably still is.
Actually, no, because I have the radio station saved on my car radio right now, and they're in Compton Hall now.
Oh, in the building.
Yeah.
They're not in Compton, California.
No, Compton Hall. And then the Piper Press used to be there. That's
definitely not there anymore.
Yeah.
That's, I think, another building. And the police station used to be there, and that's moved on.
Yep.
The campus police. So... yeah, we're walking along and we're seeing this big sky bridge.
Yep,
that was being built literally the entire time we were here and opened the semester after we graduated.
We know you care so much.
Yeah, this is all very exciting. But we're walking towards this area.
Now, we should say, too, we were walking for a good, 5 minutes before we decided to start recording.
It's a big campus.
Huge campus.
And we're about to enter... You see, I used to live in a building called Towers in my freshman year, and I have to carry we were art students, and first year art students have to, regardless of their discipline, have to have a giant fucking portfolio and drawing board and all this shit. So you have to carry it across campus, because I lived in Towers, which is on the opposite end of campus from all the art buildings.
I lived in Highlands, so I had that same walk too.
Yeah, you're basically, it was right.
And actually, I remember this right here, because we're in this curved sidewalk that goes up a hill.
So a lot of kids would just dart up the hill, but I was like, that shit gets muddy. I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that, because there would always be mud, too. And in the dead of winter, it was always hell, because in the dead of winter, there'd be wind. Was
this a mistake, Levi? We're talking about very boring esoterica from our college years.
You said you got time. You can edit this down.
We'll see.
All right.
All right, so we're approaching the art district, though.
Yes,
we got Hamilton, Hamilton Hall, which is where... on the second floor, all the drawing classes.
Right, that's where we would have gone right here.
And then we got Loveland, which is where many of the sculpture 3D classes were,
Right, sculpture, big that painting.
Printmaking.
Printmaking was a big one there.
Yeah.
Yep, and then Doucette, which something I like about these halls is that whereas the rest of the campus seems totally remodeled, these buildings are unchanged.
Yeah, well, because Hamilton is definitely a mid-century, probably built in the early 60s, I believe.
A lot of ribbon windows.
Yeah,
something we learned from our architecture class with Dr. Schurz.
Oh, yeah. jeez. And then Loveland is like basically an old like elementary school building, practically.
Kind of, yeah. It's got scarabs on it. I remember we learned some sort of significance about the scarabs, but
Doucette, I think, was probably, I would guess, built in the late 60s or early 70s.
Right, because it doesn't quite have that mid-century modern like sort of look to it, not like Hamilton does. But it's far more. It's a huge brick building. If you're wondering what it looked like,
new,
some artwork on it.
Yeah, which I'm fine with. That's fine. You know, it's not necessarily my bag specifically the artwork, but you know, it's an art building. I get it.
I get it. Yeah, you gotta try to get the kids in, make it look like some art is actually going on.
There's this building, Alexander, over here that was built specifically for the music department, and then 4 years later they closed the music department.
The music department here is closed?
They closed years ago.
What?
Like right after we graduated.
Wow, I had no idea.
It might still exist in some form. Don't quote me on that, but I guarantee you it's been diminished.
There was this person I knew. She was a cello player, and she wanted to, because this is Edinburgh University, where the Fighting Scots, they were very proud of their bagpipes, and the year she was in, it was the first year they were going to offer a bagpipe major, but it was only available to one person. Wow. Only one person could be a bagpipe major.
Got like some alien stuff going on here.
Yep. But she unfortunately, the bagpipe director's son apparently got it. Such bullshit. Classic. Is this chalk? This looks like chalk on the building.
Yeah, I think it is. So it can be refreshed, looks like. It's probably like that paint chalk, you know.
Yep.
So it'll last through a few storms.
This artwork is definitely graphic design major, if you ask me.
I feel like, yeah, well... We're very anti-graphic design majors.
Graphic design majors are the
entire
worst.
Film department, when we were there, hated the entire graphic design department. That's just the truth.
That's just how it is.
Like, I think if you asked any of our classmates in our film classes, they would agree. They would concur.
Well, they act like they're the best when really, like, their
job... They're most soulless.
Yeah, they're most soulless. Their job's so easy. Yeah. So, all right, we're approaching Doucette Hall now. Oh, that door is 100% open.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. All right, let's try going into the basement.
Okay, I like that.
That's where we want to go.
All right, we're walking in. Wow.
Good Lord.
Memories. Alright, going into the basement. So we want to see if the green screen room's open. That's where we'd hang out.
And we're here on a Wednesday in the middle of the summer. I think nobody's going to be here.
Definitely not.
Okay, good. Nobody from the faculty is here, it looks like, so that's good.
Oh, there's Bruce Gallery, the art gallery on campus. That was always fun to go to.
This looks like it's probably locked.
Well, we got the other door to check.
Oh, yeah.
Is it open? Holy shit, it's open.
Oh, well, turn the light on.
Hang on. I gotta get a flashlight out. Here we go. Oh, wow, snakes on a plane. Oh, my God, these posters.
They got new posters.
Men in Black 2.
Oh, they got a Master and Commander poster.
Oh, Air Force One. I just watched Air Force One. Wow.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that's so weird.
That is so good.
I assume probably like some graduates worked
on
this. That's Thelma Schoonmaker on the right there. You see that?
Yeah.
That's so weird. This is a post-production audio recording lab.
Huh, that's interesting.
Post-production soundstage, they're saying. Is this locked?
This is locked.
Great.
I don't remember the code to it. Alright, but this is...
Wow, this is an interesting discovery.
Here's the equipment room. We spent a lot of time in there. I had a job in here.
I would hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And, people thought I worked here.
This is a very confusing looking schedule they have here. They have
It's also on the field. The schedule is printed on a field of a behind-the-scenes shot from Casablanca. So it's already like, okay. It's geographically confused is what I'm saying.
Very, very confused.
It's probably a very echoey section of the podcast.
It is. Wow. That Air Force One poster, that blew me away.
Yeah, well, they've got... and Master and Commander is one of my favorites, so shouts to whoever from Edinburgh worked on Master and Commander.
Is this door open at all?
That was it on it.
Nope. We can't visit the green screen room, unfortunately. A room we spent way too much time in. Well, there was that couch down there, so we would always just hang out in there.
Yeah, it was an incredible couch. We'd hang out. Because it was this room where there was a green screen, a fairly shoddy green screen, but we used it a lot for our projects. And they also had these. They also had a bunch of light tables for the animation students.
We should. You want to go up? We should go up to the second floor.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see what's up there.
Let's see what's going on up there. And there's all the art offices. Doesn't look like anybody's here, which is good.
Thank God. Honestly, that would have been kind of embarrassing. Explaining what we're doing.
The fact that we're recording right now through all of this.
All right, so here we are on the next floor up.
Art office is open. Somebody in there.
We just passed the art office.
Oh, they still have this poster up.
This
poster that has all movies that Edinburgh University faculty worked on.
It's the same poster.
It's the same poster. It is unchanged.
Yeah.
We're taking a photo in front of it. But we got Ace Ventura, Atlantis, Battlefield Earth,
movie.
Ice Age 2, Night at the Museum, Shark Boy and Lava Girl. There is
Donnie Brasco, Kate Leopold,
Castaway, Ratatouille, Bourne Ultimatum, Robots, Shop Girl, the famous.
Where is the Adjust Your Tracking poster? By the way,
There should be an Adjust Your.
Levi co-directed.
It should be here. I agree. Oh, this is the screening room now. Also locked. Oh, we
passed our classic classroom.
Classic classroom. We spent way too much time in there too. Oh wow, here's all the old Chimera books. I definitely have stuff in there, so.
Yeah, I technically do.
Oh, and the lecture hall. Is the lecture hall open?
I guarantee you it's not open.
Oh, I love that hall.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. We still watch so many movies in here.
I know. All right, we should probably end this.
All right.
Hey, wait.
We're going to find somewhere to sit and actually talk about the book.
Okay,
here.
Yeah.
And if there's any weird reminiscences that we come across in our mind, we'll bring it up.
We'll bring it up. All right, we'll be back.
Good Lord.
All right.
Welcome back.
Welcome back
to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Heretic.
And I'm drenched in sweat from walking across this campus.
I know, it's a very humid day. It rained earlier in the episode. You might have forgotten about that.
Yeah, I do remember that now.
But yeah, no, so we're here, we're sitting in the student center, which is mostly dormant for the summer, but we are here in a fairly quiet corner where we're not going to embarrass ourselves recording a podcast.
Right. We got a nice window view of Van Houten Dining Hall from where we're at, where we started.
The stage. We can't really see, we wouldn't be able to see the act playing on the stage if they had someone playing.
We can maybe hear it.
This was always a spot, I feel like, because we used to come to lots of events at this building.
The film series was?
Yeah, our film series, which you weren't very involved in, but I had some heavy involvement in.
I know, and it was always steeped in controversy.
In controversy. There'd be movies I was angry we were showing. I mean, listen, I was 18 to 22 when we were here, so I'm sure I acted like a dick.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw somebody that was involved in the film series while we were walking across campus, so it was a wild experience.
You pointed at him, he pointed back.
Yeah, no direct interaction, but we acknowledge each other's existence. He and I are friendly enough. All right. We're going to talk about a book, though.
Yes,
That's setting the stage. We're here. Otherwise, this doesn't matter to you guys at all.
Right.
So for our 100th episode, we kind of decided on this long time ago.
Right. We wouldn't do because I would say this is season 3 of the show. Yeah. And the biggest thing missing from season 3 of the show is the fact that we've had no Jude Watson in it.
Yeah, we did. We
read
read something right at the
Leia Journal.
We read the Leia Journal right at the beginning of the season. And we got Rebel Force coming up, which she wrote, which I'm excited to get to. That'll be our last series we cover. But we wanted to celebrate Jude because she is the patron saint of this podcast.
She sure is.
So we chose. We were juggling a few different options for this. Mm-hmm. We thought about her first series, which is The Brides of Wildcat County.
Yes,
which was a Western chapter book series.
Yep, there's 6 of them. And the problem with that series is of the 6, there are currently only 4 on eBay, and book 1 goes for $20 to $30. So we would have had to buy one book and split it. Like, we would have had to, like, both read the book, and it would have been a headache.
So we wound up settling on what I think was the correct choice, which is her National Book Award winning novel, What I Saw and How I Lied, which came out in 2008. Under the name Judy Blundell, which I believe is her real name.
Okay.
Or her, whatever. Her birth name, I don't know.
2008 is also the same year Last of the Jedi starts coming out, too.
So she's still working on that.
She's still working on that, and they're both, this book and, of course, those books are all put out by Scholastic, so she... Yeah.
And I listened to, she did an interview for the audiobook release of this very brief interview, like 5 minutes. And I listened to that, and she talked about how this was everything she had done up to this point, I guess including things like Brides of Wildcat County and original properties, were things that were the editors brought to her. So editors would bring her pitches or licensed properties or whatever, and she would work on that. And this was the first thing that was an entirely, like, she generated the concept, pitched it, wrote it, published. So, and it won the National Book Award for Young Readers, which is is like one of the more prestigious literary prizes in the U.S.
And not only that, but it also won the School Library Journal Best Book of the Year and the ALA Best Book for Young Adults.
So, we're not big young adult or young readers outside of these Star Wars books. I read a little bit of this kind of stuff when I was a kid, but I kind of quickly moved to, I'm not saying more mature work really, but adult genre novels. When I was a kid, that's mostly what I read. Genre novels that were published for adults. So I don't actually have a great idea of the milieu here, but I of course I read things like The Giver and all that, which is a great book. But this book, though, looking at the cover, has a very classic young adult cover.
Very kind of a black and white sepia tone photo. Like The Giver.
Of a teenage girl putting on lipstick. So this is it's very much in line with The Giver or another Lois Lowry book, Number the Stars, which is about the Holocaust. And frankly, when I looked up Jude Watson or Judy Blundell's career when we first started this show, and I saw this because it's obviously a National Book Award winner, it's a prominent thing. I looked at the cover and assumed it was a Holocaust book. Now, there are elements there of that to some degree, but this book is actually a post-World War II story about a young girl whose stepfather returns from the war. So I guess we don't need to go beat by beat through this. It's a much more kind of dense thing that we normally cover on this show.
It is.
It's more of a legitimate, I shouldn't say legitimate because we love Jude, of course, but it's more of a, she has a lot more space to flesh things out.
Yes. And that's one of the things that's great about this book is because she brings that level of fleshness to all the characters.
Level of fleshness.
But all the characters are all the characters that rise are important, and all the characters you get their whole tale and everything.
It's a very well plotted book, I have to say. I don't the hook is basically this girl's stepfather has just returned from the war and very suddenly wants to take his family on a vacation to Florida. They live in Queens, I believe.
Yes, Queens.
So they immediately leave for Florida.
Yep.
So you're like, he's on the run from something.
Yeah, because he gets a mysterious call.
A mysterious call from somebody that claims to have served with him. But then...
And he shrugs it off immediately. He's like, nope, that's the wrong Joe. His name is... Well, the main girl is Evelyn.
Yeah, Evie.
And then their last name's Spooner. Her stepdad is Joe Spooner, and her mother is Beverly Spooner. Yeah. So they get in the car, and she's a 15-year-old girl. She's
starting to get to that age where she wants to be like seen as like a grown up, an adult. Her mother still dresses her like a little girl in her mind anyway, and her mother's this like apparent like a
bombshell,
smoke show, apparently. Just so they
blonde hair, lipstick. Her perfume is like, My Sin. Is the name of
Barbara
her perfume.
Stanwyck herself, basically. Not blonde, of course. Joan Blundell. Let's go with Joan Blundell. One of my favorite old Hollywood stars. So that's how I picture her. There you go. I've decided. So that's the kind of like internal thing. Her friend seems to be more adventurous. She has a friend at home who seems to be more adventurous with boys and that kind of thing. So regardless, they head down to Florida. He the stepfather, Joe, claims that he already has a hotel, but they get to West Palm Beach, Florida, which is a real place. And it's late August, early September, something like that. And
everything's closed.
Everything's closed because people come down in the winter. It's not year round. Now, of course, that would be a year round thing.
Right.
But back then, there were more seasonal operations.
There was no air conditioning, so that was like a big thing in Florida was the advent of air conditioning. And Joe, he's an appliance salesman, and somebody says to him, "Joe, you could make a killing selling ACs, down here."
So they get down there, and there's only one hotel that's open. Which I can't remember the name of.
I can't either.
But regardless, doesn't really matter. This hotel, they go there, and they're seemingly the only people, or one of only a few guests at first.
We meet the Graysons, who are a husband and wife, older, and they seem to befriend the Graysons.
Like vacation friends. I'm sure you experience this often with your travels.
Yeah. You meet people. You
meet people. It's not like you're going to be friends forever, but it's like these people will do. While I'm here, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. But they meet this couple, the Graysons. They're an older couple, and then there's also a bellhop who seems to have a crush on
Evelyn,
Wally,
and she does not return. She's like I think she says something about how, because the book's from Evelyn's point of view.
Yeah, it's my first person. Yeah.
And she's talking about like everything is there. He just has no idea what to do with any of it.
Oh God. Well, she's like very beyond her years. She also, you have to remember that she spent the previous 4 or 5 years, during the war and in the immediate aftermath, her mother was working, so she was on her own a lot. She is, by the standards of a 15-year-old that we think of today, much more grown up. Probably closer to like today's like 28-year-old, frankly. I mean, like in terms of her emotional maturity.
Right.
There's other factors there, maybe not in every area of life, and we'll get to that.
Right.
But when it comes to like, she can handle herself, she can take care of herself in a lot of parts of her life, so she kind of probably has an overinflated sense of her capabilities in the romantic areas of life. So she looks at a boy her own age who has a job, by the way. It's not like probably also had a tough time during the war, I'm sure.
His dad's a fisherman too.
But she looks at him and is like, he's not as mature as me. So that's the relationship there. And then who shows up?
Peter.
But a mysterious man named Peter, a wasp-looking guy, blonde hair. And by the way, I say wasp. It's very important because that's a huge theme of this book. This is about ethnic division among white Americans in the mid-century. So you have wasps. Peter kind of represents the wasp ideal. He at least claims, we later find out differently, but he at least claims to have come from wealth. And then you have the main family they say they're Catholics. We don't know if they're Irish Catholic or Italians, but so ethnic white people at that time. And then there are also Jewish characters who we'll get to. But and they're in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is important because that's, a lot of people probably know, very, at the time, and I'm sure culturally still, very much a WASP haven, restricted country clubs, all that kind of stuff. So,
I was actually unfamiliar with that until I read this book, so that was some interesting information. So.
Yeah, and, because you know what I learned about restricted country clubs, and obviously restricted country clubs are, of course, barred from any non-white people. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
But the thing I learned about specifically with barring Jews from country clubs, and I'll jump around.
Yeah.
We find out later that the
Graysons.
The Graysons, they get a call at the hotel from
his mother.
His mother, who they realize sounds really Jewish to them.
Yep, and then the guy running the hotel kicks them
out because it's a restricted hotel. So,
and there was a whole thing too. The Graysons have wealth, and Joe and Mr. Grayson were boys, and they were going to buy this hotel together. The hotel was for sale.
This is the whole thing. The hotel's for sale, and so Joe and Mr. Grayson was trying to get Joe to be the face of a group that would buy the hotel,
right?
Because Mr. Grayson, being Jewish,
yeah,
would not be able to buy the hotel on his own, so he'd be a silent partner because he owns a hotel up in New York City.
Right.
So regardless, this guy Peter. Let's get back to Peter because he's the big.
Peter shows up. He's 23 years old.
So 8 years older than Evelyn.
Yep.
Let's just put it out there. Obviously, very uncomfortable in a modern context, and probably should have been uncomfortable then. And it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
But it's maybe not handled the way that a modern book would, a book set now would handle.
Yeah, and I think Peter, he's flirtatious, but he knows that there's lines, and Evie is the one who's more willing to cross those lines because she views herself more as an adult.
So she immediately gets a crush on him. He's a guy who he recognizes Joe. He's like, I served with Joe. Joe's my buddy. And Joe's just like, you're not my buddy. Like, yeah, we serve together, and I'll be polite because that's what you do. And I'm on vacation, and I don't want to ruin my vacation.
Yep. But everybody accepts Peter in.
Everybody.
The
Graysons.
The Graysons.
Evie. Beverly, the mother, of course. Mm-hmm. And so basically, Evie wants to try some sort of relationship. She doesn't seem clear on what with Peter, and so she she thinks that she's fooling her mother into letting her see Peter by having her mother tag along. So they go to a movie. They see, what movie was it?
Oh, what was it?
Oh, it was Bogart, Bacall.
Okay, yeah.
Dark Passage. Is it Dark Passage?
I'm not
Something
sure.
Passage.
Okay.
Not a movie I've seen, but I think it's Dark Passage.
I will say too, first part of this book, I'll have to finish it. First part of this book mentions a lot of songs.
Oh yeah.
And I made a playlist on Apple Music.
Oh, so definitely, post that send it to me and I'll post it. It's easier to link to a Spotify.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
So I'll make a copy.
But
of it.
I just called. If you're on Apple Music, it's called "What I Saw and How I Lied." So just search that.
Find it, yeah.
You can just look for it. You'll find it.
But I'll make a Spotify one and we'll post that on the social media. So anyway, yeah,
they bring Peter in,
and they basically, this whole crew is hanging out. This is right at the beginning of school time, by the way, and Joe, the dad, is just like, she doesn't need to go to school. She's smarter than the teachers. We're all just going to hang back and hang it out at this place for a month. They're there for a full month.
Yeah,
basically.
They're there forever.
And they hang out with the same people because they're the only people in the hotel for every day. They do different stuff, different activities. The Graysons really take a liking to Evie. Mrs. Grayson takes her shopping, gets her some nice, more age-appropriate clothes.
And that's something, too, is Mrs. Grayson is the one to push her to be more like an adult because her mother treats her like a child, and basically Mrs. Grayson is the one who defies her mother and basically okay, let's dress you up, let's do your hair, let's do your makeup, and basically forces what Evie wants. Evie wants to be perceived more as an adult, and but her mother doesn't want her to do it because her mother has her own insecurities about about, what happened to her, because her mother
was 17 when
she had Evie. Right. It was a forced marriage. Her father, of course, left town. Basically, he brought her breakfast in bed and said, "I'm leaving," and then never came back. So and then she meets Joe later on, and then Joe
has to go off to war.
So that's why they get married. So that sort of thing. There's also Grandma Glad, who is Joe's mother, who is actually who they live with in Queens and who they lived with.
Who's not a factor until she is a factor in the book. So let's actually get to that because there's a lot of great like scene work here, like just character stuff, but there's not a lot of stuff happening, like plot stuff, until something
big happens.
So basically, nothing is going on between Evie and Peter, really. They see each other, they like flirt, but there's no consummation of any sort.
Kissed.
Really. They kissed once, and he's like, "That I shouldn't have done that. We're not going to do that again." Mm-hmm. And then basically...
Oh, but also, too, we got to talk about her mother goes places. Her mother's taking golf lessons. They go to try to find her at the golf course. She's not there, so her mother disappears sometimes.
Right.
So it's like,
and she's always on these pseudo dates with Evie and Peter, too.
Yes.
She's along for the ride often. So basically, at a certain point...
the Graysons leave.
Oh, well, not quite. There's a whole because the Graysons get kicked out and they have to leave by morning, and so Evie's very upset by this because she's never really seen this kind of. She's from New York, so she hasn't seen this extreme bald-faced anti-Semitism before, probably at her age. So, not that doesn't exist in New York. Obviously, I'm sure it exists there, maybe more than other places, given how. But regardless. So she runs off and she finds Peter was eventually moved out of the hotel and was staying in what he says is a friend of his father's cottage or something, his uncle's cottage, something like that. So she runs off, finds this cottage, and they talk about it. And Peter, by the way, also had some interesting political ideas earlier in the book. And remember, he's presenting himself, and it is more clear when we find out more about who he really is. But like, he presents himself as this blue blood wasp-like guy. But so when she brings up some sort of racism that she had seen, like it's because the water fountains, that kind of thing. They're in the South, and she's from New York, so she's never seen like segregation of that extreme, like labeled segregation. So she brings this up, and he's like, well, the whole world is based on segregation between the haves and the have-nots, and like that's like, at least like, he says, quote, the coloreds have like they quote can't get in trouble because they know what they can and can't do, which obviously is nonsense. And she challenges it, and he's like, what about Jackie Robinson? And she's obviously a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, because there's another reference to the Brooklyn Dodgers later, and she's just like, a lot of people like to bring up Jackie Robinson when anything comes up, and he's like, and that's too much pressure to put on that man, and all this stuff. So she's a nice, a good-hearted, young person. Anyway, so she's very upset by this anti-Semitism, this bald anti-Semitism she saw. She runs to Peter, tells Peter about it, and Peter's like, that's just the way it is. There are, so there's cracks here where it's like, is this really a good guy, like, that you want to, like, pin all your, crushed dreams on?
Well, this also is interesting, too, because in this scene where she runs to him when she finds Peter is at this house, and this is where the kiss happens, and then her mother shows up.
Well, it's not just a kiss at that point. They, like, make out.
They make out, yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then her mother shows up, and in the moment you're just thinking she caught them, and, like, even though, like, I certainly had it in the back of my mind that there was something going on.
Yes.
I didn't really put that together.
Well, I put it together right before this scene because She mentions every time her mother comes home from the golf course, the Wally has to wash off the orange leaf petals off of her car. And when Evie goes to Peter's house, there's a mention of orange petals, but she doesn't make the connection there. So, but if you're like really paying attention, you might make that connection, that, you know, sort of thing. But, you know, she doesn't question in the moment that when Beverly shows up that, like, how did my mother know where I was at, sort of thing, you know. But this then culminates the next day. The Graysons leave. Peter shows up at the hotel. He wanted to see the Graysons off. He's too late. Joe, who has been a royal stick in the mud this
and Joe has been like, I need to go fishing.
Hang on. We should actually reveal, though, what Peter tells Evie about Joe.
Oh, right.
This is big.
All right, because Peter did serve with Joe in the Second World War, and after the war was over, they were stuck doing some sort of duty still off in Europe for another year, and they found the Germans had obviously, and this is a real thing, the Germans had confiscated all the wealth of the Jews that they took to the concentration camps. So all this gold and like just, you know, accumulated household
Empire
wealth.
Under the Sun.
Empire of the Sun, which is a phenomenal movie. If you guys haven't seen Empire of the Sun,
really underrated.
One of the
Spielberg.
more underrated Spielberg, not one. I think it's the underrated Spielberg. Like, I feel like most of them get claimed, but like that one, I'm just like, that one is like really fucking good. Anyway, so check that movie out. Young Christian Bale, incredible in that. All right, so and Malkovich, Jesus.
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, so they did this, and like, so then the U.S., I assume the U.S. Army, maybe just the Allied forces in general, they ultimately have all this stuff, and it's all this gold and jewelry and all that kind of stuff that, frankly, like doesn't belong to anybody anymore because the Nazis killed all these people. So you have this kind of, but it's like this haunted thing. They decide they're going to smuggle some of it out because and there's which is a fucked up thing to do, of course.
Yeah, and Joe and Peter are in on this deal, and basically Peter had to stay. Joe's time to leave. Joe takes the money with him, and Joe comes back to America with the promise that when Peter gets back, he'll share the wealth.
Basically, they'll open a business together. They'll go into business together.
Yes.
So,
but when Peter gets back,
Joe had bought a store and expanded too fast. Bought another location and is losing money. So he no longer has that money, basically, or at least so he says.
Yes.
Because we later find out maybe he does. But and so Peter's mad about it. He was the guy that was calling at the beginning of the book, of course, and he followed them down to Florida because he found out somehow.
Grandma Glad. She tells him they go to Florida. So
regardless, he comes. And so that's what he tells Evie. Evie hears that. She had to deal with seeing what happened to the
Graysons?
The Graysons and all that. It's roiling around in her head. And so the next day, Peter comes, wants to say goodbye to the Graysons, misses them, but Joe has been wanting to go fishing this whole time, and he's like, yeah, we should leave, and like Beverly and Evie are like, we should leave, like, because this hotel sucks, like, anyway, like, we should check out right now. Because Evie has a conversation with Mrs. Grayson where she's just like, oh, like, Joe's really mad about it. And, like, Mrs. Grayson's like, well, that's great, but, like, is he, like, checking out of the hotel? And she's like, I guess not. And she's just like, well, then what good is that, basically?
Yep.
Like, so regardless, he wants to go, he's like, I need to go fishing, and that's it.
They turns out bellhop Wally, his father's a fisherman. They charter a boat from him. A hurricane is coming. Wally's dad is like, I'm not going to go out there, but you guys can take the boat. And Peter's like, well, I can handle a boat. So Evie stays behind. Peter, Beverly, and Joe, they go out on the boat.
And so Evie is really worried. She sees Wally, the bellhop, who she's been kind of ignoring the whole time, but clearly is into her. And they walk around. They seem to have a charming enough conversation. She kisses him. He kisses back. Things evolve. They start doing some stuff, and she eventually, at first she's like, okay, sure, and then she eventually doesn't want it anymore, and she pushes him off.
Yes.
That's basically what happens.
And she says she wanted to chase that feeling that she had with Peter the night before.
But she realized this was just physical. That was love. She loved Peter. She doesn't love Wally.
This made her feel dirty, was what she said. Like, this was like
that's
cheap
classic
and dirty.
mid-century shit, man. Mid-century psychosis.
And that scene, he also too gets like a little. I mean, this is a young adult book, so you know you can kind of push what you can do.
We're typically reading younger readers.
Yeah, Obi-Wan, he just wanted to hold that princess's hand, but
I would beg to differ. It doesn't get super explicit. We don't know like how far it went, but her blouse is ripped. Mm-hmm. So when they walk back to the hotel, the owner of the hotel, the anti-Semite owner of the hotel, sees that her blouse is ripped, sees Wally, and is just like, I need to talk to you. And we find out later that he fires Wally for that. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Her parents, Peter, still not back.
Yes, the hurricane comes.
Landfall.
She has to go to the courthouse and bear the hurricane by herself with everybody else who are there. So then police finally come because they know the whole situation. They said, we found your parents. They made inland somewhere. They ended up breaking into a restaurant. They held out there. And then she asked, well, what about Peter? And the story is that they were in bad weather. The engine stalled. Peter is below deck trying to get the engine started again. A wrench falls on his head from above, hits him in the head. He comes stumbling out of the hole.
Overboard.
He falls overboard and drowns. That's the story.
Or maybe doesn't drown, but at first they don't know if he drowns or not.
Right.
So this whole time, basically, Joe's like, we need to leave because they're going to be suspicious of us. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what happened. But basically, just as they're about to leave, the cop comes and is just like, we found Peter's body.
You need to stick around.
They do determine that Peter died by drowning. So that's good for them. Mm-hmm. And this is when Grandma comes down because this makes the papers. This is the whole thing. These New Yorkers coming from out of town, bringing their... And there's a thing, and I mentioned the Wasp thing earlier. There's a whole thing where he's just like... that when Joe was questioned by the police, they asked him if he was Jewish, and he's just saying, I couldn't tell him I was Catholic to defend myself because they hate Catholics too, which is true, classic Wasp nonsense. I love talking shit about Wasps. But anyway, so they basically...
Joe and Bev act not like suspicious, but they tell Evie, it's like, you got to stick with this story that we're telling, we got to get out of this.
And we don't know, and we never really know, but they might be telling the complete truth. Like we don't know. But basically, they also don't want them to dig too deep in because ultimately we know that Bev and Peter were having an affair.
Yes.
So if that comes out, that's just going to make them look suspicious, even if that's unfair, which may or may not be. We don't know. So basically, eventually they do figure that they have not a trial, but like a hearing, basically.
Yes, to determine whether or not
to press charges.
And Evie finds out about a lot of stuff through the newspaper. She's reading the newspaper
because she can't come to the...
Yes, and this is where she figures out about her mother and Peter, sort of thing, because they say, turns out Peter stole a car from New York. That's how he got there. Then he broke into this house. And, they found 2 glasses in there, one with lipstick on it. So this is kind of where she makes the connection that her mother is involved with Peter. Kind of is heartbroken over this whole thing because, she loved Peter, that sort of thing. And then we have this sort of trial, basically. And they call witnesses. They call Wally the bellhop.
And Wally the bellhop's like, I saw that lady, Beverly, kissing that boy, Peter. Mm-hmm. Which he did, certainly, we know that. Mm-hmm. And all this stuff, and ultimately Evie chooses, she wants to just go home and move on with her life. So she chooses that she's going to lie about a few things.
Yes.
In order to
save her family.
Save her family so they can go home. So because she doesn't know whether she believes, like, they may be innocent, they may not be, but like she just wants to get out of the situation. So she decides that she's going to tell them that.
Tell the judge.
Testify that she was having an actual affair with Peter, and that they brought Beverly along on their dates as cover so that no one suspect them, including Beverly. And so there's this whole, and she basically then had to justify the Wally thing, where Wally saw them kissing, recounts that story about how the day of the day they were out at sea, when she and Wally make out for a while, and maybe she basically claims, and it's not entirely wrong because she was very uncomfortable in the situation, but she essentially claims that he tried to rape her.
Yeah, basically attacks Wally's character, which then
Wally's father calls her a whore.
Yeah, he gets kicked out of the courtroom. Basically just discredits him as a witness. And then also, too, she says about his other story that he saw Bev and Peter
says she was wearing her mom's dresses and stuff to look.
And that's where Wally got confused. So basically, from here, so she lies. She does tell the truth, though, that she loved Peter, that she was in love with Peter. That she even says, that's the one thing, the only truth I told that day.
So at this point, they decide not to press charges. There's lack of evidence. So they head home, and when they get home, this was actually a nice little touch that Jude puts in, which is they do this. There was this character at the beginning of the book, her friend
Margie,
who made fun of
a Jewish
girl because she was talking to a boy that she liked, and so she sees her at the end of the book, near the end of the book, and she's she's like, oh, I like your voice, because they were in choir together or whatever. So. And they make plans to go to the record store sometime, which is a nice little...
Yeah, her and the Jewish girl. And then she also says, too, that she doesn't want to be friends with Margie anymore when she gets back either.
Yeah.
So, she does make that effort. There's also another moment at the end, because they have to go back to Grandma Glad's house.
Okay, and by the way, Grandma Glad, when she came down, we didn't get into a lot of her, but she has $8,000 in cash, which in gold that she knew about all the stuff that Joe and Peter had gotten up to over in Europe. So,
and she brings the money along as a bribe. They're going to bribe the judge with it.
Yeah, she's an old battle axe, they call her, which is a classic. I love that. That's one of my favorite old-timey terms. So she has that, and Evie knows about it. So Evie takes that, and she goes to, I don't remember the name of the hotel, but the hotel that the Graysons own in New York. She looks them up and goes and finds Mrs. Grayson on the roof of the hotel. She's painting on the roof, just an incredible, I'm like, oh man, mid-century New York, baby, like Mad Men, like I'm up in Midge's apartment in Mad Men.
And then there's also a great little point too, where she's painting skyscrapers, and there's little gold dots for the windows, and we'll get into. But later, as Evie is walking away, she's looking at the buildings, and she's like, "Oh, the windows, the gold dots." She's just like, this is where I want to be. She
wants to live in the city, baby.
I'm going to live in this city, and there will be people who will be
doing better than me, doing worse than me.
But all our lives
we'll be in the mix, connected together.
Yep, that's a great moment.
That basically she offers to give, because Mrs. Grayson's the only Jewish person she knows.
Jewish person she knows. Yeah.
She offers to give her this money because. And Mrs. Grayson's just like, that's blood money. Mm-hmm. Nobody should have it. And I certainly don't want the responsibility of spending it. Mm-hmm. Basically. So, What happens?
I think she basically still forces Mrs. Grayson to take the money and says, like, but you know more people who could use this money. You can find use for this money. So basically she does force the money upon her.
And then she leaves and walks around the city and is just like, yeah, this is going to be my spot. I'll live with my parents. It's the only place I can live until I'm an adult.
There was like a really great moment in the end of this. Because she's like, of course they're going to be like pissed at me, you know, sort of thing.
Oh, this is great. I have it.
Okay.
All right. So here I was. I would live with Joe and Mom. I had no place else to go. Joe would carve out the roast on Sundays. He would put up the Christmas tree. They would hand me the phone, pick up my socks, leave the porch light on. I would never know what happened on the boat that day, but they would be my parents for the duration. Oh. I got to start over.
Okay. All right.
So, I found it. Here it is. So she says, during the war, whenever we had to give something up or put something off, we'd say it was for the duration because we didn't know when the war would end, but we knew we'd stick with whatever we had to do. So here I was. I would live with Joe and Mom. I had no place else to go. Joe would carve the roast on Sundays. He would put up the Christmas tree. They would hand me the phone, pick up my socks, leave the porch light on. I would never know what happened on the boat that day, but they would be my parents for the duration. But while I'd be their daughter, while I'd eat the roast and come home from dates and wash the dishes, I would also be myself. I would love my mother, but I would never want to be her again. I would never be what someone else wanted me to be. I would never laugh at a joke I didn't think was funny. I would never tell another lie. I would be the truth teller starting today. That would probably be tough, but I was tougher. The end. That's great book. Incredible.
There's another moment too. This is chapter 34. This is a few pages early. This is when they get home from New York.
All right.
All the way on the drive home, I just wanted to get home. But when we got there Sunday morning, there was something that made me and Mom both stop in the driveway and look up at the house and hesitate about going in. I had been thinking about my room and my bed and my white bedspread on my own pillow. I hadn't been thinking about that that I would be going back to Grandma Glad's house, a place that had never really been mine. Mom and I really looked at each other for the first time since Florida. Then she gave a little tilt to her head and shrugged. She picked up her suitcase and walked up the path. I remember the night in the car where she tilted the rearview mirror and put the lipstick on. How'd she make herself do it? Being an adult. Was this it? Doing the thing in your life you didn't want to do and doing it with a shrug? I picked up my suitcase and followed her. So that was like that sort of thing, like where I think it's at this moment where she realizes, I don't want to be an adult yet, you know, because that's kind of like she wants to be an adult.
And that whole for the duration thing is like, yeah, like, and obviously, like, this is a more complicated relationship with her parents than a lot of people have. But it's kind of the same thing where it's like, you know what? Like, this is fine. I can be with my parents for a little longer. Like, I can be a child a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. I know what's waiting for me out in those lights, the big city lights, baby.
New York, New York.
All right. I really like this book. I was pretty.
This book's pretty good.
We talk a lot when we review Jude's Star Wars books about how they're among the best Star Wars books we've ever read. Mm-hmm. And that's not just young readers, but in general. And I have to be clear with the audience here because, we host the Star Wars podcast.
Yes.
But frankly, the ceiling, in my opinion, generally speaking, for Star Wars derivative literature is not that high.
Right.
Occasionally you'll get transcendent stuff, and I think moments of Jude's Star Wars stuff does get truly transcendent. But, this is like, I was like, I wonder how compelling I will find her outside of the context of Star Wars, Mm-hmm. And I mean, we got a hint of it because of Last of the Jedi, which is largely about original characters. So it's not like I was like, well, this is about Obi-Wan and I care about Obi-Wan, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But this was, I also just thought it was a really, pretty, cool idea for a book. Very well plotted. Her, one of the only criticisms I've ever really had of her books Star Wars books is that sometimes the plotting feels rushed, but she has a lot more space to work with here, of course, and probably had way more time to write it. You know, we talked to Emil a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how the schedule for these kinds of things on the writers is brutal.
Right.
And so that's actually one of the main things I would want to ask Jude about if we ever interview.
Well, because she's also writing Star Wars books
every other month. And while she's working on not just this, but like other projects. And
so like I wonder how long this was in the oven for. Like how long she was
in that interview, she said she had like the spark of an idea, and then her editor at Scholastic was like, "Hey, do you want to do like a you've been a good soldier for over a decade doing these Star Wars books and stuff. Do you want to do your own thing?" So she didn't mention Star Wars by name, by the way. She said, I did adventure books, licensed books for movies and television, that kind of thing. But anyway, I thought this was fantastic, and certainly by the standards of this show, like it's probably the best book we've ever read for this show.
Probably.
That doesn't mean it's like a perfect work of literature, but I think for a young adult book, it's very appropriately complex. Mm-hmm. I think, a lot of young, and I don't read a lot of young adult fiction, so I'm not making any broad generalizations here. I know, obviously, there's way more to it than just the big franchise books and stuff like that. But this is a legitimate story that has interesting characters that you have complicated feelings about all of them. None of them are all good or all bad. You're dealing with a kind of relationship that could seem inherently predatory, but you have some legitimate investment in, even though you have reservations, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's hard to do. That's very difficult, especially when you're writing toward a younger audience, even though obviously this is more for teenagers than the kind of sixth graders that we normally are talking about. But I just found it very impressive. So on our scale, the midichlorians, now would I give it 5 stars if I were writing about it for the New York Times? They don't do star ratings, but you know what I'm saying? If I were writing about it for Time Magazine, would I give it a perfect rating? Probably not. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But on the midichlorian scale, this is conceived in them.
I agree. It's
conceived.
So conceived. It is the chosen book. It is the chosen one. And it also too is we've seen her, because we have it's not so much a court case as but it's a hearing, and it's kind of presented like a court trial. We've seen her do court trials before. Obi-Wan had his whole court trial before.
An all-time moment.
But this is it's still just compelling. It's compelling.
Well, I love courtroom dramas, and what I love about this is that it's a vacation book, a courtroom book, a post-war novel. It's a lot of different little subgenres that I love. Really well mixed, little kind of noirish, mystery. I just find it inherently compelling. Evie is a compelling narrator, a compelling character, and again, all the people in her orbit are interesting. All of them. There's not a single character where I'm I would not read a book about this person, which is, I think, usually a good sign of a pretty good novel. So, shouts to Judy.
Shouts to Judy. Judy Blundell, you deserve this award. And we deserve to read a book this good for our 100th episode. So,
all right, so let's talk about next week, because we have not determined this.
I think we're reading Servants of the Empire. Yes, this is the...
So let's be clear, we have 3 series left.
Correct.
And we still have to do the Final Jedi Prince book. And there might be another 1 or 2 things sprinkled in.
Okay, yeah. 2 things I can think of that are sprinkled in.
Which we can talk about that off air. But the final 3 series, just if you guys want to get these books and prepare, the next 4 weeks probably we will be covering Servants of the Empire, which is a Rebels spin-off series. So watch, I believe it's episode 9 of season 1.
Yeah, it's all season 1 stuff. So
watch that episode, because it's largely about a character that we meet in that episode, from what I gather. So we'll be covering that the next 4 weeks. Then the next series will be this Clone Wars series of original novels that was published in the late 2000s.
Yes, by Ryder Wyndham,
who we talked about.
Adventures in Hyperspace, the Han Solo series.
The Han Solo books. He wrote those, but this is more for our demographic and not for little babies, from
Yes.
what I gather. So, and then our final series we'll be covering in full is Rebel Force, which will be our return to Jude, Star Wars.
Jude Watson under the alias Alex Wheeler.
Alex Wheeler,
yep.
which sounds like the name of like a super spy in a young reader's novel. Isn't there something like that?
It could be.
I don't know.
But anyway, so that, and then that's it.
Those are the 3 series, and yeah, we'll be in there somewhere. We'll be doing the Final Jedi Prince book and maybe a few other little.
Yeah, I can think of two other straggler books.
We'll announce those when we announce them. But next week we're going to start Servants of the Empire. Back to Star Wars, baby. We don't have a movie or anything picked out. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, because I don't even know what the
I don't even know what the title is.
Yeah.
So we'll announce that. You'll find out day of. You didn't know that you were going to listen to us talk about our college days for the first 20 minutes of this, but we had an in-depth discussion on this book, which, again, not a Star Wars book,
right.
but
we
told you that ahead of time.
Yeah, you knew that. We said we weren't even going to have an in-depth conversation about this book, and we had an in-depth conversation.
Yeah,
we went into this book.
Yeah,
so.
A lot of stuff to talk about. I recommend the book highly. You can find it for nothing online.
Yeah,
so.
that's why we bought it.
That's great.
It's great.
I'm sure you could also find it for very little new if you want to do that.
Who did the audiobook? Who read the audiobook?
I didn't listen to the audiobook. I have Audible on my Amazon account, so I get a free audiobook every month, and I saw there was an interview with
that's
Jude Watson at the end, so I was like, well, I'll waste one of my free audiobooks on this.
Oh, okay.
So I can listen to that for the show. I did it for the show.
There you go.
All right. So
there you go. All right. Until the books are due back.
The library is closed.
Happy 100. Bye.
Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by The Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2021. Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.